Alright, what's up guys? It's Dem Apples again, back with another video. This time we are going to be going over Chess Brilliancies number 2, and this is the game between Anatoly Karpov and Viktor Korchnoi. Um, Again, this is game 2 in Yasser Seirawan's book, Winning Chess Brilliancies, and he chooses this game, and I think for a really good reason. It's just a very simple attacking game to me, with some really nice moves in it. Very creative, and it really shapes the future of the theoretical status of the dragon. So Karpov starts out with e4. Karpov used to play e4 according to him, but that was early in his career. Later, I suppose he switched to d4 and c4. And Viktor Korchnoi is up for the fight. He plays c5, a Sicilian defense. Viktor Korchnoi is, I don't know, seems like a pretty aggressive player in some certain ways. He tends to hold on to pawns. He has a willingness to suffer for material. And yeah, I mean, he's like a pawn grabber. And this is how I play chess too. Like, you just grab a pawn. You're like, go to your opponent and you're like, prove it, you know? And then if you just keep the pawn throughout the endgame, you just win. So, it's the kind of style chess he plays. Very provocative. So, knight f3, d6. This could go into many things like a Najdorf, which is most common. Could go to a classical, dragon, or anything really. We have d4, takes, knight f6, and knight c3. So the Najdorf, which is the most common defense now, starts with a6. It's probably the black's best Sicilian. The classical goes knight c6. Pretty sure this is like the Scheveningen or something. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But he goes for the Najdorf. I mean, not Najdorf, the dragon. The dragon does not have a very good theoretical status right now, but at the time it was seen as like, I don't know, a more feisty way to challenge 1e4. And we can see how intense things can get if you play it accurately, and if you don't play it accurately. Like, you're walking a tightrope for both sides, but engine analysis shows that white is probably a bit better here. So, bishop e3. White prepares, castling queenside, probably with f3, castles, blah blah blah, right? Bishop g7, black continues with the kingside fianchetto. This is the only move that really makes sense. We have f3. He doesn't really mention. Yeah, he does. Yasser does mention this as well in the book. A common mistake is like, oh, I want to go queen d2 and like castle immediately. But if you go queen d2, black has this very annoying move, knight g4, and your bishop is forced to g5. And this isn't really where it wants to go. After like h6 and knight c6, black is doing fine, mainly because of the pressure on d4. So black was able to move the knight for free, gaining a tempo, and then just starts piling up on the center. And after here, like, maybe unpopular opinion, but I prefer black here. Like, black has a c4 square. He's got nice open lines. This bishop is not doing too much. White is a touch better, or like it's equal, but I don't really believe in it. So it's important that Karpov starts with the move f3, preventing knight g4 and bishop g4. Very nice prophylactic move. Knight c6. Apparently I can't speak today. Just developing. Queen d2. Now Karpov can go queen d2. Now that there is no knight g4. And castles is an option. Actually, castles is rated higher by the engine. And Yasser doesn't think too much about this move, saying that d5 and black equalizes. Now, I'm not quite sure about this right now, but he does give an exclamation mark to bishop c4, because Karpov is going for the Yugoslav attack. And perhaps back then, when the book was written, the Yugoslav attack had a pretty good reputation. Right now, I still believe it does. Again, castles d5 is probably fine for black. E d5 is not really what white wants to play after something like this. Black gets a pretty comfortable game. Just trades off everything. And yeah, in this endgame, there's not much to play for. Everything's really just traded off. If white grabs here, black grabs here, and I prefer black, so white has to defend, and bishop b7, and black should definitely be fine here. I would still prefer black, to be honest. He has some pressure on the c file. So, at the time, I suppose this move castles wasn't considered as much as of a threat because of d5. Now I'm not sure, but bishop c4 is definitely a more aggressive and challenging way to face this line. We have bishop d7, just developing a piece, preparing rook c8, and this is the whole point of the Sicilian, right? Black goes c5 to exchanges on d4, and then gets the open c file, which he will use for counterplay. h4. White is not stopping and hasn't even castled before playing h4. Yeah. This move, I'm not quite sure about. He likes it. I'm not sure why white didn't castle first. Usually you want to castle before starting an attack. Make sure your king is safe. But h4 definitely has some merit for starting it right away. After all, black does have no threats against the king. If white castles, like, too quickly, could run into trouble on the c file. But then again, white needs to castle someday. So rook c8 and bishop b3. This is a very nice move, actually. The bishop does very well on b3, where it eyes the king. But additionally, it gives the king some really nice support, right? This bishop, and this knight are kind of like barricading, right? Barricading the rook and any other possible infiltration. So usually black goes for queen a5 here, but now that the bishop is on b3, it's snugly protecting all the pawns. And white is doing perfectly fine here. And we have knight to e5. Another possibility he mentions is knight takes, and this interesting move, b5. I'm not sure if this was ever a move or if it is still a move, but it looks quite wild to me. He gives h5, a5, pawn takes, a4, b4, knight d5. And in this variation, it's clear that white's attack has come first, right? And maybe we can see the advantages to not castling right away. Because, well, in this particular position, if white were to castle sometime, black could maybe consider queen e8, hitting the pawn on a4. But here, white hasn't even castled, and so maybe the extra tempo is really important here. Here, white is definitely much better. The attack is coming, h-file is open, and this bishop is snugly just protecting these two pawns. White hasn't even committed his king, and white's doing very well. His bishop is eyeing here. Queen probably going to get in sometime. However, black doesn't have to go for b5. According to the engine, the best move is h5 here, and this is another option. After castles, knight c4 is played. Now, modern grandmasters, according to his time, play h5. So this move is really just prophylaxis in a way. Knight c4 seems very good on paper, right? You fork the bishop and the queen. Now, white never wants to, say, just move the queen. Because after knight takes, if you can't remove this bishop in any, like, fianchetto-ish setup, like, it doesn't matter if it's a Sicilian or not, if you can't remove this bishop, you're not getting an attack. I know it's only -0.2, but black is practically winning the game already. Like, black has a free hand on the queen side, and his king is as snug as a bug in a rug on the king side, because, like, what am I supposed to do? He can't get rid of this guy because he has no dark squared bishop. So this is really not what white wants to do. So white is forced to concede the bishop pair. Takes. And now goes h5. And maybe now this is why we see that h5 is the better move. Basically, again, it's just stopping h5. There's not much to it. It's also it's also discouraging g4 because just pawn takes, or even in some cases like a knight takes, just to not ruin the pawn structure. But just pawn takes, and like black is trying to clamp down on the king side before proceeding on an attack on the queen side. But we have bishop takes knight, rook takes, and now h5. And this is a good move. White has to strike right now. If white does not strike right now, he has a couple other options, but black gets an attack, and especially puts a lot of pressure on the c3 knight. So say g4, which is another move. Definitely not bad, but h5 is better. Here, h5, rook c8. And this is just an example variation, but we can see here black is ready to sacrifice. And it's not quite clear where white's attack is, right? It seems like black has a ton of pressure. Of course, engine stubbornly says that white is better after knight b3, queen a6. But this is an example line. And I suppose here white has e5. But it's not super easy to play for either side here, right? It's very complex. Karpov, in his previous games, at least, when I've looked at his games, it seems like Karpov prefers really simple chess. He likes to keep it simple. So h5 is doing just that. White is not giving black any time to set up an attack, not wasting tempo with g4. So we'll take a look more at this line. Black also has h5 as this perhaps better move. Both of those are moves, queen a5 and h5, but h5 is another one. And here g5 would just be an error according to Sarah 1. You locked, again, white is a bit better, I suppose, the prospect of f4, f5, but still, there's no point to do this. Your bishop is aiming to trade itself off, and now we are kind of blocking it in. You've also blocked up your entire kingside attack. This would practically be just not good for white after knight e8. The pawns are just locked up. If g takes, knight takes, and you aren't getting through this knight, there isn't really a good way to dislodge it yet. White can consider knight here, to try to move it, but then c3 becomes weak, and black can consider like putting more pressure on the knight or just taking it outright. So again, let's look at this line. h5, and black really doesn't want to take with the pawn. It just damages the pawn structure for no reason. White is already winning after e5 and knight f5. Really nice idea. The bishop is pinned. White is getting to the bishop. And conversely, like if you can just take a fianchettoed bishop without wasting your own, you're probably just going to win the game. Because now you have a dark squared bishop, right? And black has these crazy dark squared weaknesses. So here, white is definitely just winning. Even though he's down a pawn, the bishop is going to get captured. This is just a disaster for Team Black. So, knight takes h5 is pretty much forced, after which g4 is played. Okay, so Karpov here plays g4. Now, he's just dislodging the knight from the h-file. Notice how Karpov is playing every move with tempo, like h4, h5. He's not giving Korchnoi a chance to attack him yet, right? Momentum is really important here. So Korchnoi just simply moves the knight back, and now Karpov plays knight to e2. It's also worth noting, black does not have to take the pawn, but by taking and just going back, Korchnoi is doing what Korchnoi does best, right? Just grabs a pawn, runs with it, and says, good luck trying to beat me, right? But knight de2. Not the best move according to the engine, but it's probably one of the best, and for good reason. Karpov, again, like simple chess, right? This is prophylaxis at its finest. White connects the knights, and make sure that there is no like random threat or rook sacrifice on c3, right? Just protecting his knight, reinforcing it. Additionally, when white is preparing e5 and g5, both of which will wreak havoc down the center, or like let's say g5 gets played, white can try to dislodge the knight from the h-file, opening it up again. It's just an idea. Let's see where white could have gone wrong. Bishop h6 looks like a very natural move, but after this amazing shot, knight takes e4. Queen e3 has to be played. White takes the knight, takes here, bishop e5. This is kind of getting deep. After f4, takes, bishop h8, importantly. Black wants to keep the very powerful bishop, right? Takes, and after queen b6, exclamation mark, according to Sarah 1, but apparently king takes bishop is better. I'm not sure. Queen b6 looks pretty natural. Black has lots of threats. And again, the dragon on h8, it's like not dying, right? So even after something like king f8, queen takes, here, like, yeah, you're up 1 point, but the bishop is alive. You don't have an opposing dark squared bishop. You're never getting to this king. Black is just really snug here and can consider just bringing the queen now, starting an attack on the king side. White is actually in big trouble here. So sometimes it's worth sacrificing material to keep the dragon bishop. But again, as we know, Korchnoi is a kind of greedy player. He's not going to just give you material for no reason. Also, queen e3 here. Rook takes, again, very nice thematic sacrifice. Pawn takes, knight back, takes, and knight e2, queen a5. Let's take stock of the position here. White isn't breaking through with queen check. And, like, I don't know what white does here, right? Black is doing fine. You can go rook c8 maybe. Maybe bishop e6. And white isn't getting through yet, right? So, say here. Black has plenty of counterplay here. And so, definitely, black would have enough compensation for the sacrificed rook. This looks dangerous for white, and I doubt Karpov would go into it. So knight d e2, a very instructive move. I would probably add two exclamation marks behind it, because it just paves the way for a really smooth and easy attack to come without any counterplay. Queen a5. So first of all, white was threatening e5, after which takes, he would push g5, removing the defender. So say black played, I don't know, a6. White's intention is to go e5, and on takes, play g5. After the knight moves, white wins a piece. Right. So queen a5 is a really nice move. It stops e5, and again pressures the queen side. Exactly what black wants to be doing. Bishop h6 now, and only now that the knight is defended, right? And bishop takes h6. Again, as I said, Korchnoi is greedy. Bishop h8 is another possibility black could have gone for, keeping the dragon bishop, and I think that practically speaking, this is probably black's better choice. White does not have a clear way through yet, and because of the strong bishop on h8, and while black might not be completely winning, he can consider ideas on the queen side. It's hard for white to break through here. But the way this plays out, the bishop is captured, and after the trade, black goes here trying to create counterplay. But it's not enough. Black already has some severe dark squared weaknesses, and Karpov plays this really nice move, rook to d3. Again, black pressures, white just defends. White would like to move the knight. Actually, white has an idea, right? He wants to go g5. Here, he wants to go g5, and then try to dislodge the knight with like knight g3 or knight f4. So say white goes g5, and knight h5, knight f4. And say black just goes whoops and takes, well, gets mated. I don't think Korchnoi would have fallen for this. But let's see why g5 is bad right away and why rook d3 must be played. On g5 and knight f4, black takes, right? If white takes, queen takes here, rook h2, black is threatening checkmate. And black has a perpetual check if he wants, so white is not an ounce better here. And after check and takes here, we can count stock. Black is up 3 points. White has no attack because this knight is just killing the circulation of these pieces. And white has no attack. Black is completely winning here. So g5, knight f4, big mistake. Not going to be played by Karpov. Instead, he protects the knight before going for g5, knight f4. Another move to maybe consider was knight d5, but this just hangs the c2 pawn. After takes here, queen b5 is a very nice move with a double attack. And white, looks like white has something, but the king is perfectly snug on e7 with pawns surrounding it. White's not getting through, and white, on the other hand, is getting mated. So after rook d3, we have rook c5. I don't know. This is just not a good move. I don't know why Korchnoi played it. Actually, now that I think about it, I do know. He wants to stop g5, but he did not stop g5. We'll see. Queen d8 was the best move, after which g5, knight h5, knight f4, queen f8 is the idea. Black has to just secure the dark squares and trade into an endgame, where he is probably slightly worse here. Black is probably worse here because white has a very nice open H file, and black has a couple weaknesses. But again, black has some counterplay in the form of b5, b4, and the open C file. So black would be fighting for a draw here, but the game is definitely not over. Again, g5 is the main line. e5 is also an interesting move here. But after takes, knight g3, queen f8, takes, and g5, bishop c6 is given. Now, actually, king takes f8 is just really good for black. Here, after rook takes and knight takes, rook takes, and now rook c7. The idea being knight h5 and king g8 when the rook is trapped. This is just good for black. But in his analysis and book, this interesting move, bishop c6, is given, where apparently black is supposed to have a very nice advantage, according to them. Now, the engine doesn't believe this, but if you're looking at this as a human, and there are freaking 5 connected pass pawns coming your way, I mean, this looks scary, man. Like, I would not want to be white here. So knight h5, and again, black has to go for this exchange of queens. And g5! Still, this did not prevent g5, because after rook g5 is pretty much forced. If knight h5, white goes for this idea again, takes, and knight d5 again, not really just a mistake. This is where white could go wrong. Takes, and takes. Actually, this is Sarawant's analysis. He gives this interesting line and says that white is winning. Well, he is right that white is winning here. Engine gives queen a4, threatening mate, and all of a sudden white is on the defensive, and after knight f6, black is barely surviving. Knight h5, knight e8, and after knight g3, knight f6, and white could definitely just make a draw by repetition. But he is not wrong, because after rook takes g5, rook d5, exclam is the right move. This is practically forced, as there are 2 attackers on this rook. Takes, rook e8, and knight h5. If nothing happens, white will take on e7 with a fork. Black's situation is so dire that the computer is giving queen takes knight. So this is looking pretty bad for black when the engine says that you got to give up your queen for a knight. And so rook takes g5, and rook d5 is still played anyways. The rook can be captured 3 ways, but all of them are bad. After rook takes knight, knight takes. Black bows rook e8. Again, black cannot take with the knight because he gets mated. So again, rook takes, knight takes. And black can still not take with the knight because he will get mated. Now, Korchnoi goes for rook e8. This seems just a touch too passive, but again, he likes his material, right? Engine is giving queen c5, but you're just going to be down here. And the difference between this position and the other positions when black was down in exchange is that there is no dark squared bishop. There is no compensation for black. Black is just down material. It's got this weak pawn here, like weak dark squares. This is just bad. So rook e8, knight f4. Very nice move. White should not just rush in and just take and go for this because there is no checkmate. Remember, the king is always really safe on e7. This is what Korchnoi had been banking on, right? And on check here might be bad, but maybe, so let's say white goes for like, oh, let's go knight here, preventing him from running, right? Well, it doesn't quite work. After knight f4, black has queen g5, and suddenly white's in some trouble here. Black's king is just going to run away. So, after knight f4, white is preparing to go here, and then play knight h5. Black does nothing. White will take, and white has multiple moves, actually. Here, knight d5 should be good enough, threatening checkmate, forcing black to give up the queen. Black goes bishop c6. In a dream position, I guess he takes the knight and everything's okay, but Karpov finds a brilliant move yet again, e5, striking at the knight. Bishop takes knight is forced, pretty much. On pawn takes pawn, there is forced checkmate after this takes, and the amazing move knight h5. And now we see why e5 was such a brilliant move. He cuts off the defense, right? If white had gone for takes, knight h5, so the idea of this, right? White threatens checkmate and this, so black has to take, and then rook g1, right? But black has the amazing bailout move here. Queen, and after takes, knight check, king here, takes. It's not so clear after all who's winning. Like, look at these pawns. Like, black is actually better here. But by playing e5, Karpov blocks access to g5. And so tactically, it's working out. Karpov is not a really tactical player, but when he sees a tactic, it works. So again, bishop takes d5. Oh, black also could have taken with the knight and gotten mated quicker. That would have ended his misery, but he takes with the bishop. Pawn takes knight. Threatening mate, so black has to take back. And after takes, king f8. Karpov actually just resigns. Yeah, it's pretty awkward here. So the thing is, he resigns because he sees the following combination. It's only plus 2.6, but practically speaking, after takes, this is all forced, by the way. Rook e1. The queen and the rook are converging. If you go here, this is just really bad. You're down with practically an entire rook. The 2 pawns don't really matter when your king is getting checkmated. And so, black would have to give up their queen. And probably simplest is to take. And after takes, this is a technically winning endgame for white. White just tries to grab all the pawns and stop the pawns, from advancing. And so, Korchnoi knows this. He knows he's on the losing end of a brilliancy, and Karpov is really good at converting endgames. He's a very strong positional player. And he, as we can see, he can be a very strong tactical menace as well. So just an overall amazing game. What we can take away from this or not just the tactical things, right? We can always solve tactics, right? But the subtleties, right? Knight e2 and rook d3. And also just noticing the amazing tactics. g5, rook d5, knight f4, just being careful, right? We gotta close out a game well. And if we look at the final position, it's not clear what black accomplished on the queen side because Karpov just prevented anything from happening. Black just got a queen and it's only threatening a pawn. Like, this was just utter domination. And after this, the dragon didn't have the best reputation. So, hope you guys enjoyed this game, and I'll see you next time.